We've all had someone say something to us that stuck with us, and it probably stuck with you for a long time. In fact, you could be in here, you could be 60, 70, 80 years old, and you could think of something from your childhood that someone said to you, and you haven't escaped it, good or bad. Good or bad, somebody said something to you along the way, and it's always going to be a part of who you are. I remember it was my senior year of high school, somewhere along in that year, and we went to visit my grandfather. My grandfather is a hero of mine in the faith. At the age of 49, he felt called to ministry, and he obeyed that call. He came to Oklahoma City. He went to Midwest Christian College. He became a preacher at Vici, and then after that, he went to a place called Cookson Hills Christian Ministry, Cookson Hills Christian School. A lot of you are familiar with it, where he served for several years. He's always been one of my heroes. That year, I decided to go into ministry. I decided to go to Bible college, and we were visiting my grandfather. And my grandfather had a friend, and I'm not going to name him, but my grandfather had a friend, someone that my grandfather looked up to. So, of course, this is going to be someone that I respected deeply. And so we were visiting with my grandfather, and his friend came by. And his friend came up to me and goes, "I heard you're going to Bible college." I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "That's so great." He said, "I heard you're going to go into ministry." And I was like, "Yes." And he goes, "You are going to do great things. I'm so proud of you. Your grandfather is so proud of you." And those words, proud, and those words, great, that phrase, "you're going to do great things," it's stuck with me ever since. And it meant so much to me in that moment. I'll come back to that. But for those of you that are my generation or older, when we talk about our tongue, when we talk about our speech, when we talk about things we say, we might remember a time when someone insulted us and we said, "Well, sticks and stones may break my bones, but words will never hurt me." For me, it was different. I was the I'm rubber, you're glue, it bounces off me and sticks to you guy. Okay, I think I fancied myself as like had a lightsaber, and I was a Star Wars guy, and stormtroopers spewing hateful words at me, and I was bouncing them back at them. So I guess that's why I chose that. But that whole sticks and stones thing is ridiculous. Okay, it's ridiculous. And first of all, let me just say this: if you're around a group of people that are saying mean things to you, such mean things that you're like, "I would rather you beat me with a stick or throw stones at me," you should probably get new friends. Okay, I would monitor the company you keep, because you should probably prefer friends that do neither, okay? But that whole sticks and stones things, we know that sometimes what people say to us, it wounds, it cuts deeply, it hurts. And no matter what sort of pithy comeback we can offer, usually the damage has already been done, and the words, they've already sunk in as like blows, boxing blows, or even worse, daggers that cut deep. But what if I were to say that it's not the words themselves that hurt us? And that may be unfair because, and we'll revisit that thought in a moment, but you guys may be thinking of a word right now, like someone might have said worthless, or stupid, or ugly, or too short, too tall, too poor, or maybe they called you fat. My second encounter with my grandfather's friend went a little bit differently. So I was with my father-in-law, and we were on a trip to go to the Kiamishi Men's Clinic. Some of you have heard about the Kiamishi Men's Clinic. A bunch of men get together hearing some great preaching, worshiping, but most of all hanging out with one another, camping out, enjoying time together. And I loved it, and I loved going with my father-in-law. And so we went, and my grandfather was going to be there, and his friend, and I was so excited to spend that time with my grandfather. And so we walked up to them. My grandfather was there at a camper, sitting out on a camping chair with his friend, and we walked up to them, and the first thing my grandfather's friend said to me was, "Man, you've gotten fat." It stung, like immediately, like it didn't physically blow me back, but like I felt off balance. The great thing about my father-in-law being there with me is he's much quicker to come back, and he knew this man well, and he said, "Man, you've gotten old." And I appreciated that in the moment, and it diffused the tension of the moment, but it hurt still. It hurt. And he never knew that it hurt, but it hurt. But it wasn't the words, it was who said it. And it was how he said it. And it was the context in which he said it. So I want to talk about words and kind of point out why words aren't necessarily the culprits here, the ones to blame. So let's start out with some words, because words change over time. Words change with culture. Words evolve. Words take on new meanings. It happens all the time. So I'm going to start with the first word, which is awful. Awful. If my wife came out, because sometimes my wife tries something on and she wants my opinion, which is crazy to me because I don't know. She always looks good. I don't know if it's fashionable, but she comes out and she's dressed in something for an event and she says, "How does this look?" If I were to say, "That looks awful," or if I were to say, "You look awful," like that would not go over well, correct? Now, if we were in the 1700s and my wife came out dressed in something and I said, "You look awful," she'd be like, "Oh, thank you so much." Because at the time, awful and awesome were the same thing. Were the same thing. So words change. And it's not the words themselves, but it's how and when and where and what the motive is behind how you use them. So if you want to tell me afterwards this sermon is awful, I'll get to choose how I take that. The word meat. Meat. There's a guy named Samuel Johnson that wrote in the 1700s, 1775 exactly, wrote a book about this group that was on an adventure. And in it he says this: "Our guides told us that the horses could not travel all day without rest or meat." How many of you know horses that eat meat? If you're riding around on horses that are meat-eating horses, that's a bit of an issue. At the time, any sort of solid food, anything that wasn't a beverage, a liquid, was considered meat. Any solid food that you ate was meat. So we're going to have drink and meat tonight. That would be the phrase. Okay? It's like when I grew up, when I was younger, like any sort of carbonated soda was like a Coke. Like you go to order, I want a Coke. What kind of Coke do you want? Well, I want a Dr. Pepper. Like that's kind of, I remember like up until like I was probably 18, I always wanted a Coke, and it might have been a Sprite, it might have been, Orange Fanta, I don't know. We called it Cokes, okay? So words change with their meanings. The word clue, I kind of like this one. The word clue, at one point, was a ball of yarn or a ball of twine. Etymologists, the best they can guess is that the thought of yarn or string weaving its way through things like provided a clue. But that's really difficult for me to understand. But clue, now an indicator or a hint, at one point was a ball of yarn. Another one I like is flirt. This is kind of a fun one for me. Not because I'm a flirt, but flirt at one point was like a sudden movement or a jerk. Okay, which some of you are like, I know a flirt, he's a jerk. Like a sudden movement or a jerk or like flicking something. Okay, and none of us would think flicking is flirting unless we're a junior high boy and it's camp and we're flicking a girl, that's probably flirting. But flicking is not flirting, okay? But at one point to flirt was to flick and to sudden movements and all of that. So if you were flirty, you were just couldn't sit still, okay? Again, junior high boys. I love you guys. I do, I really do. And finally, my favorite one is the word guy. Because now I call everybody, every group I say, "Hey guys," we calm down guys. Even if it's guys and gals, it's guys, like, "Hey guys." In youth ministry, I do this all the time. Well, the word guy derives from the 1600s, there was a man by the name of Guido Fawkes. Guido Fawkes, also known as Guy Fawkes. Guy Fawkes was a part of a extremist religious group that was going to blow up the British Parliament. Okay? So they took 16 powdered kegs, they rented a room underneath the Parliament, and they put the powdered kegs in there, and their plan was to come back while Parliament was in session and blow it up. Well, rumors got around. One guy told his brother-in-law, because his brother-in-law might be in the building that day, and they ended up arresting Guy Fawkes. They tortured him, and he gave up his co-conspirators, and they stopped the plot, the gunpowder plot to blow up Parliament in England. Well, to celebrate that, every November 5th, they have Guy Fawkes Day. They have Guy Fawkes Day, and they have these bonfires, and they gather around, and they celebrate, and they just enjoy the fact that they stopped the gunpowder plot. But they also started doing this thing where they would take a human-sized dummy, decorate it like Guy Fawkes, make it look the appearance of Guy Fawkes, and they would burn it in effigy. Well, they would refer to this dummy as a guy. That's a guy. And early on in that time, and at some point it changed, when you called someone a guy, you were calling them evil or low life or an enemy. And a guy was an insult. And it's completely changed. It's completely changed because words, the context matters. How you say it matters. Who you say it to matters. I can say one thing to one of you that I couldn't say to somebody else. Maybe it's because I know you. Maybe it's because you know me. Whatever it is. I want to take this one step further to talk about words themselves are not the culprit. The first word is lovely. Lovely. A father with his daughter on her wedding day. He's getting ready to walk her down the aisle. He puts his forehead on hers and he says, "You look lovely. You're going to make an incredible wife." Lovely in that context elicits all kinds of really good emotions. Ladies, if you're walking out of Walmart late at night and you're walking to your car and it's a little bit dark and some guy gets out of his car next to you and he says, "Hey, you look lovely tonight." That's a whole different emotion that comes to mind. Same word, different context. How about the word past? P-A-S-T. P-A-S-T. You're giving a job interview, and after the job interview, you discuss the candidate's resume, you discuss his interview, and you start talking about his past. You could say he has a lot of great past experience. Or you could say he has a little bit of a checkered past. Completely changes the conversation. And the last one is this. It's past again, P-A-S-S-E-D. And I can think of two questions you could ask and give the same answer. That answer is she passed. The first question could be, hey, how did your granddaughter do on the MCATs trying to get into medical school? She passed. The other question could be, how's your grandmother doing? She passed. Exact same words, completely different. Words are not the culprit. We can't blame the words. And when we talk about taming the tongue this morning, I want you to keep that in mind because there's something deeper that we need to consider and something that I think could change everything. So we're going to look at James chapter 3. James chapter 3, and I want you to read along with me, starting at verse 1 if you have it. James chapter 3. The first part of this is tough for me, but we're going to read it anyway. Not many of you should become teachers, my fellow believers, because you know that we who teach will be judged more strictly. And with that, I should probably, put my notes away and walk off the stage. That always scares me to death. We all stumble in many ways. Anyone who is never at fault in what they say is perfect, able to keep their whole body in check. When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Or take ships as an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue is also a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. Okay, James, tell us what you really think. I mean, goodness. He is not a fan of the tongue. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being can tame the tongue. No human being can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil full of deadly poison. Again, James wants us to take this serious. With the tongue we praise our Father, our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives, a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. Wow. This is what I love about the book of James, and as Charlie's pointed out, it's so practical and so in your face and in your business and convicting. In reading this over and over again in the middle of the COVID-19 pandemic, the tongue seems a little bit of a pandemic itself, according to James. A restless evil full of deadly poison. I mean, that is disconcerting. And it's very defeating rhetoric. It's like it feels very hopeless to me. But there are some clues, and not balls of yarn clues, indicators, actual clues. So I want to read it again, starting in verse 3. Okay? When we put bits into the mouths of horses to make them obey us, we can turn the whole animal. Now, if you put a bit into the mouth of a horse with the reins, you can even put a saddle on it, but you put the horse by itself out in the field, the horse is still going to do what it wants. Right? It's just a horse with a bit in its mouth, reins, saddle out it's going to go do what it wants. Or take ships for an example. Although they are so large and are driven by strong winds, they are steered by a very small rudder wherever the pilot wants to go. But still, a ship without sails, or a ship where there's no wind, or there's no engine, or there's no pilot. It's just a rudder moving it around with no purpose, or not moving at all. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. If you have a fire in your fireplace, that's one thing. Contained, helpful. If your couch is on fire, that's a whole different afternoon. It's a whole different experience. The tongue is also fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. All kinds of animals, birds, reptiles, and sea creatures are being tamed and have been tamed by mankind, but no human being being the key there, remember that, can tame the tongue. It is a restless evil, full of deadly poison. None of us want to be poisoned. But if you had a certain blood clotting disease, they actually take toxins from leech's blood, poisonous leech's blood, poisonous toxins, but it's used in medicinal purposes to thin blood. So what was once poison is now a life-saving agent. Keep that in mind. With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water. So what is in your spring? What sort of spring is in your life are the words that are coming out of your mouth salty? Are they biting? Are they rude? Are they gossip? Are they just lies? Because if they are, that's not because of the words. It's not because of what's happening here. It's because of what's happening here. And what's happening here. What are we putting into our hearts that's coming out in ways that are hurting others? Matthew 12 says this. Matthew 12, this is really good for this passage. Make a tree good, and its fruit will be good. It's Matthew 12:33, by the way. Or make a tree bad, and its fruit will be bad. For a tree is recognized by its fruit. You brood of vipers, how can you who are evil say anything good? For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. For the mouth speaks what the heart is full of. A good man brings good things out of the good stored up in him, and an evil man brings evil things out of the evil stored up in him. Proverbs 4 says this, above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. So back to bits in horses' mouths, back to rudders on ships, back to the sparks that start a forest on fire. Who is at the reins of the horse? You put an equestrian at the reins of the horse is going to maneuver and do incredible things. You put a horse thief at the reins of the horse, that horse is going to be taken where that horse shouldn't go. Or how about a ship, for instance? You have the captain at the wheel of the ship, and that ship is going to land safely in harbor. You have a pirate at the wheel of that ship is going to be used for ill-gotten gain. A fire, a spark to start a fire. There are firefighters that know how to start fires on purpose that can stop the advancement of a wildfire. Fires that are calculated, fires that are contained, fires that are important. An arsonist with a spark just wants to watch the world burn. When it comes to the reins of the tongue, the wheel that turns that rudder and the torch that sets things on fire, and it comes to that captain, it comes to that rider, it comes to that person that's lighting the fire, it can't be you. It cannot be you. James said no human being can tame the tongue. But I think James would be okay with me saying this. No human being except Jesus. Jesus being fully man, but also fully God. None of us can make that claim. No human being can tame the tongue, but Jesus can. 2 Corinthians 10 says this, for though we live in the world, we do not wage war, which can be a war of words, as the world does. The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds. We demolish arguments and every pretension that sets itself up against the knowledge of Christ. And, listen to this, we take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. We take captive every thought to make it obedient to Christ. The heart, out of the heart, the mouth overflows. The head, we take captive every thought and make it obedient to Jesus, because we're not driving the ship. We're not riding the horse. Jesus is in charge. It's not up to us where the horse goes. It's not up to us where the ship goes. It's up to the captain. It's up to Jesus. So what do we do? How do we make sure this and this is taking care of this? James already provided the guide for us. We've already talked about it. It's a simple guide, easy to understand, hard to do. He said this, be quick to listen. James said, be quick to listen. How many of you have got in trouble with your mouths because you spoke up before you thought through it? Quick to listen, slow to speak, and slow to become angry. And then, how many things have you said when you were angry that you regret? The minute it came out of your mouth and was in the airwaves, you were like, I can't get it back. But you knew that was going to be a problem. So what do we do? So maybe we get off Facebook. But if we're not going to get off Facebook or social media, because Maybe you're like, your words are, you're fine with what you speak out loud, but what you type, what you text. So if we're not going to get off Facebook, then how about we pray about it before we hit post? Or maybe you should ask somebody to read it before you post it. My wife talks me out of so many arguments, and I am so thankful for that. In fact, and this is a little insight into the mind of Joel Dyer, which is always scary. I have a Google document where I type all the things, and picture me like this, sinister. Type all the things that I'm going to say to people to make sure they know how smart I am and how dumb they are. And I type and I type. And I type in a Google document, and then I go back and look at them, and then I'm going to send them and make sure they're all typed up and just perfect, and I'm going to own people online. And then I read them, and then I'll have my wife read them. And I have a document, an ongoing document of things that maybe it's just therapeutic that I get it out. I have never sent one of them. I've never posted one of them. Not one. Because after thinking about it and after calming down, I realized that's not helpful. Some of you have known me long enough to know that's not always the case, but it's much, much more the case lately. So, think about it. Have somebody help you with those things. Here's some more things that I think help. If someone might understand, or someone might misunderstand what you're saying and your intentions in saying it, don't say it. If there's a chance they may not get your intentions, don't say it. You don't need to come back and say, well, that wasn't my intention. You should have never said it in the first place. If you don't know the person well, don't say it. Don't say it. If you haven't earned the space in their life to offer the advice you so desperately think they need, then don't offer it until you've had a chance to get to know them and know their story. I think this is a great way to look at it this morning. So maybe some of you speak in tongues of men and of angels. You're very eloquent, but you don't have love. Well, then you're only a resounding gong or a clanging cymbal. Because our words should be patient. Our words should be kind. Our words should not envy. Our words should not boast. Your words should not be proud. Our words should not dishonor others. Our words should not be self-seeking. They should not be easily angered. Our words should keep no record of wrongs. Our words should not delight in evil, but rejoice with the truth. They should always protect, always trust, always hope, and always persevere. It's amazing how much the chapter about love can shed light on how our speech should be. Those are the things that should be, that should guide our words and guide our speech and guide our conversations. James also talks about a fig tree bearing olives and a grapevine bearing figs. What you are rooted in, again, that well, that spring, what you are feeding yourself, what is, all of that matters when it comes to what we say. So, what kind of fruit are you bearing in your speech? In the things that you say? The fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control. So our words should be loving and joyful and patient and full of kindness, and they should be good words, and they should be faithful and gentle, and we should have some control of them. I didn't see my grandfather's friend for a long time, and probably kind of avoided him somewhat. I don't know, but it was just different paths in life, and timing was never that I was around him much. Well, one time I was at an event that honored him. It was a banquet in his honor, and he deserved every moment of it. Please help. I hope you understand. He deserved every moment of that. There was no resentment on my part toward him in that moment. He has done so much for the kingdom, and he deserved that moment as we celebrated him. The thing about it is, though, I was thinking about both things he had said to me. that he was proud that I would go on to do great things, but I also could not escape that other word. And in that moment, I realized his identity is not in his worst moment. His worst moment in interaction with me does not define who he is. And I hoped that I could receive the same grace from others. And I thought in that moment, how many people 10 years ago, 20 years ago, did I say something to? And every time they're around me, they're still thinking about that. And if so, I hope I said something good. I hope I said something that gave them life. I hope I said something that encouraged them. I know not all those conversations were like that. And there's probably plenty of people when they catch a glimpse of me are reminded of something I said that I shouldn't have said. And that breaks my heart. But I have hope, not that I can tame this tongue, but that Jesus can. In the beginning was the Word, and that Word, the Word, was with God. The Word is God. And with the Word, if I have the Word and focus on the Word, all of the other words will take care of themselves. And so I'll leave you with this morning. Finally, brothers, whatever is true, whatever is honorable, whatever is just, whatever is pure, whatever is lovely, whatever is commendable, if there is any excellent, if there is anything worthy of praise, think about these things. And as we think about these things, I hope that the words that come out of our mouth do them justice. Will you stand with me? At a time like this, I don't know that how helpful a sermon on our words is. Maybe it's very helpful. Certainly a great time to be encouraging and to speak truth and to build others up and to speak words that bring life and hope and encouragement and remind everyone that Jesus is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and the virus doesn't change that. So, and maybe it's this morning you just want prayer because you have people in your lives that are afraid, or you have people in your lives that are sick, or maybe you need to finally let Jesus be the captain of your words, the captain of your life. Whatever it is, we have a moment for you to do that. We don't have to shake hands. I don't even have to put my arms around you to pray with you, but I would love to pray with you. We would love to hear you acknowledge that with Jesus, things could be so much better and so much more right. You have a chance to do that this morning, and we welcome you to do that. I'll be up here. We have so many others in this room that would be great to talk to. Please, if you have a decision to make this morning, we would love for you to do that. Let's pray. God, you speak life. You speak your words created this whole thing. So much power, so much beauty. And God, our words can be so ugly. God, help us not to speak so many harmful words, so many discouraging words, but help us be people that help you speak life into others. And I pray that this morning in Jesus' name.